Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
Roseville Wrecking Ball. This is one of those podcasts where I listen to every episode. I love what he's putting out there.
Roseville Wrecking Ball. Josh Shrum.
Parcels of Knowledge. Does a fantastic job with that podcast.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God, we need Article 8 scholars right now.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.
Good morning and welcome back to Parcels of Knowledge, the podcast dedicated to delivering knowledge to the city letter carrier with your host, the Roseville Wrecking Ball. Today we got awesome guest on again, and I always like this guy. He's always fun to talk to, and everybody would agree he's a popular guy. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Josh, and happy 250th birthday, America. My name is David J. Grosskopf, Jr. I am the president of Branch 3 in Buffalo and Western New York.
Yeah, that's right. It is 4th of July, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's some dedication from this guy. We're here up at 6 a.m. on 4th of July. We'll just go. I got some questions submitted from listeners, and we'll just go straight from the top. Is your Facebook back? Is it safe to accept your friend request?
Yes. That whole fiasco, I've been able to solve it and start another page, and it's the same as my last page. It's my name, David J. Grosskopf, Jr., except the only difference is after Jr. there is a period. And you'll know it's my new profile because my profile picture is the CLC Shield. The other page I do not have control of. I'm not selling any Honda Civics. I don't have any Rolexes, and my uncle didn't die.
Okay. That's good that that's cleared up. Why is he so awesome?
Oof, I don't I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, right?
Yeah, I guess that's more of a statement.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, whatever. I don't really view myself that way. I just view myself as a warrior for letter carriers and as a competitor. I like to compete, and if somebody thinks that's awesome, well, that's awesome, right? I'm thankful for that.
Now, what's the job of a trustee even do? Do you have to live in Washington, D.C.?
The first part of that, I can answer, and the second part, obviously. So for example, what is a trustee? If you go to the Constitution, and it's page 40 of the Constitution, it's the Board of Trustees, Section 10. The Board of Trustees shall act as trustees of this union. They shall no less than frequently than annually audit the books of this union, employing such professional and clerical assistants as they deem necessary. They shall render a complete report of such audits to the Executive Council, which shall arrange for their publication in the Postal Record. They shall also make a complete report of such audits to the Convention. They shall hold in custody the property of the union and approve the bonds of all bonded officers. They shall also serve as trustees of the NALC Health Benefit Plan, Life Insurance Program, and the NALC Annuity Trust Fund, and such other duties as the National Convention may direct. The Board of Trustees shall select from their own number one who shall be the chairperson of the board. And then it just goes on to state how much money, they will be paid, weekly, annually, those types of things. The second part of that question, no, you do not have to live in Washington, D.C., and I've talked about this, I think, before on some of the show. That's one of the major reasons I'm running for trustee. I'm not quite ready yet to leave, Western New York, per se. So the best way for me to exact change in my union, in my circumstance, was to run for the trustee position, which allows me to remain the president of NALC Branch 3, Buffalo, Western New York, while also holding a spot on the National Executive Council, again, where I can, elicit, my own input and things like that, and try to craft things to make it better for the membership.
Awesome. Besides the duties outlined in the Constitution as a national trustee, which you had conveniently prepared, you're always a prepared man. What other tasks do you plan on undertaking when working at National?
So the original plan, and still kind of the plan, is, obviously, I'm on the slate with the concerned letter carriers. James Henry is the head of our ticket. Obviously, I'm hoping, James wins. And, we've had many conversations. I have a broad range of things that, that I do very well in Western New York as the president. And what I've talked to James about is working with the other members of the executive council that may need some help in different areas. And again, that'll trickle down to, for example, state presidents or local presidents, to try to work with them. And some of that stuff I've kind of already done here in my run up, to the convention in my nomination. For example, we do this thing with investment and sweep accounts in Branch 3. And, for at least the last few years, I've been talking to, many branches, getting on the phone or like this, getting on a Zoom with them, explaining to them what it is, helping them try to navigate that so their branches can make, a little bit extra money, so they're not having to worry about, just dues as their main income source, and allowing them to, whatever, send some extra people to, as delegates to conventions, hold some extra trainings, whatever the deal is. But that's kind of the plan, for me, is kind of a, I don't know what you want to call it, jack of all trades type thing, is wherever there is a weakness to, move me into that arena and have me work with that person to try to, help build whatever issue up that they're a little bit lacking in.
All right. You helped me out with that too. I asked you about them sweep accounts.
Yep.
My branch appreciated that, but I mentioned earlier he was conveniently prepared. It's because he hasn't had the questions, so he's always prepared, man. I would do the same thing, to be honest. Well, this one's kind of I don't know. It's probably a short answer. Will the things that are being talked about change actually happen, or is it all talk?
It's a good question, right? We talk about this all the time amongst ourselves. It's, as I'm not a politician. I'm not going to, promise anybody anything. But I do have a track record, a very extensive track record, where I've accomplished things, for example, as the leader of Branch 3 with my team that National hasn't been able to be successful in. And that's the type of stuff that we're looking to go after. Is, there is a lot of hyperbole out there, right? But what you need to know about Dave Grosskopf is he's a competitor. If you do notice, there's just a lot of noise on social media about this election. And I tend to stay away from the vast majority of it. I'll chime in every now and again on some things, because to me, the important thing is to show the membership. And that takes a lot of hard work. I'm not going to, be on social media or podcasts or anything, running my mouth about, what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to go out there and do it. And then I'm going to get on a podcast and we're going to talk about, what was accomplished, how it was accomplished, and how other people can be successful, doing that also.
Awesome. What will you do to restore the integrity and independence of NALC national trustees in light of the psychopathic behavior of the current trustee / Renfro puppets?
Yeah. A lot is my initial answer. The question, again, I might have used different words. I believe in a lot of instances, the vast majority of the executive council, including the three trustees, just rubber stamp whatever the national president wants to do. And there's issues out there. And what you don't know, Josh, and you're going to find out very shortly here, is I've been a busy guy for the last 2 years auditing the LM2 of the NALC. And I'm seeing some things out there. Every 6 months there's a financial report published in the Postal Record. Each of those reports during the Renfro administration show that National spends more than what the dues are that are collected. So like you're saying, what are the fiduciary responsibilities of trustees, and would you report such a discrepancy to the membership? My answer is absolutely 110%. I would report that to the membership. And you may be seeing that coming out on another podcast very shortly here.
Oh, that's exciting. Now, this person seems like he wants to be recognized. I normally don't say the names of people, but I'm just going to do it. Hello, my name is Raul Reyes Jr. I'm a member of Alamo Branch 421 San Antonio, Texas. I have been employed with the USPS for 33 years. I was elected for one of Branch 421 trustee positions in 2023. My question to Brother David Grosskopf, who audits the spending of national business agents. If NBAs don't have someone to audit their spending, would you support them being audited?
The short answer is yes, but I believe there is a process in place where that happens. I'm aware that, for example, NBAs are given budgets. There is oversight as to what they're doing, what they're spending, those types of things. Yeah, but the short answer is yes.
Okay. The NALC this one's a long one.
Okay.
So bear with me. The NALC Constitution in Article 1, Section 5 authorizes the NALC to establish LICBIF via the following language: to establish and operate under rules adopted and promulgated by the National Executive Council, a fund composed wholly of voluntary contributions by the membership to be used at the national and local levels exclusively for the purpose of assisting candidates without regard to party affiliation for election to federal office who favor legislation in the interest of labor. Said fund to be separate and apart from all other monies and funds of the union. From January 25 to now, the LICPIF has spent over $5 million. Most of that money is going to other PACs, with nearly $200K to an LLC for admin expense website services. The LCP, I don't know if this is a typo, but they say the LCPL does not have a website. I assume that it's supposed to be F. Additionally, LICPIF pays roughly $8K a month for bank service charges. Request to serve several employees within the LICPIF and National Secretary for a copy of the rules adopted and promulgated by the National Executive Council have gone unanswered. Would you, as a national trustee, be in a position to explain the spending to the membership?
Yeah, 100%. And the reason I say that with the brother from was it Branch 421 you said?
Well,
doesn't know.
This person's someone else.
Oh, okay.
The Branch 421 was the one about the NBA.
Okay. Yeah, the answer is yes. And what you don't know is, for example, the New York State Association of Letter Carriers, for years, we've been demanding copies of where that money is going because a few election cycles ago, we had an issue here in New York where we lost about 8 to 10 of our friends, and we didn't get the help that we thought was necessary from NELC headquarters and from the PAC funding for, to keep our friends in power. And at that point, that's when, we started, demanding that stuff from the national president. And it's been supplied to the state president pretty much, from that point forward. I believe it's my belief that money, because it's not dues money, it's your hard-earned money as a member out there, that there should be an accounting for that, and there should be a publishing of that of where it goes. Because I guarantee you, if you saw those reports like I did for the first time, you're going to have a lot of questions about, most people or most carriers, don't know the, political landscape. They don't know what leadership packs are. They don't know what all these other things are. When you look at this report, you're like, what is all this money and where is this going and why is it going there? And that's something that you need to know, that you need to know that the money that you donate to, help us politically fight issues is going to the right place, to the right people, to get things done. And that's, another issue. I don't want to divulge from the question here, but that's another issue. Like, a lot of money is being spent. And I know in DC terms, we actually have a small pack, but it's our money and it's a lot of money. And we need to be efficient with that money. And the biggest thing is bang for our buck. And that's the most frustrating thing, not only for me, but I'm sure for a lot of letter carriers, is it takes so long to get a lot of this stuff legislatively through. As a letter carrier in your 30 years, you might only see a bill or two, or maybe three if you're lucky, pass that actually benefits, letter carriers. And there needs to be a better way to go about that, because you don't have your whole career to hope we can buy back our TE time, or for example, which to me is a very simple subject, which is POCA, Protect Our Letter Carriers Act. It's not controversial. I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat. The safety of employees at work shouldn't be a political hot potato. That should be an automatic, in my opinion. We should have everybody co-sponsoring that, and we should have the president signing off on that. But here we are. We don't have that. So,
Absolutely. Would you, as a national trustee, be open to a transparent accounting of LICPIF and national officer travel costs to be published via the NALC website?
yeah, absolutely. I'm all about the transparency. The membership needs to know where that money's going. They need to understand why it's going there, like I said. And we need to show results for them donating that money. It's that simple. And they need to be able to track that. And that's a very good way to do that.
Now, there is talk about, among some in the CLC movement, that the NALC is too involved in politics. Do you share this sentiment?
I'm gonna say I don't share that sentiment. Yeah, like look at we don't all agree on everything, and I can use Corey as an example. Corey kind of holds that sentiment. I don't hold the exact same sentiment. We do very good here in Branch 3, in the political arena. For example, I'm one of two people in the entire country. The other one individual is the Michigan State President. We have all our congressional rep. We have all five of the NALC priority legislation pieces co-sponsored by our representatives. And again, I happen to have a Democratic congressional rep, but right below that, I have a Republican congressional rep, and I believe he's on either three or four of the five. So for me, people are like, yeah, you're picking sides, you're doing the look at the bottom line is we need to support people that support us. And I'm not necessarily concerned about if they have a D or an R next to their name. I need them to get things done for letter carriers. And that's why we need to be in that political arena. Because if we don't, there are very, very, very powerful entities out there, ladies and gentlemen, that are trying to destroy us behind the scenes. And the least of those are our competitors. So if we, veer away from that political arena and we are not in there fighting for our wants and needs, somebody else is in that arena fighting for their wants and needs, which are contrary to ours. So it's extremely important that we stay engaged politically. And listen, I don't like it any more than the next guy. But it's a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil for me and my job as the president, of Branch 3. I think, a lot of the, I don't want to say, politicians I deal with are slimy, but that's the impression that I get. It's very uncomfortable a lot of times, to be in a room with people that I believe don't have morals and don't have integrity and don't do their job, quite frankly, in general. But that's my job. My job is to figure out how to get them to come around that horn and do what we need to get done. And in Branch 3, we do that at a very high level. We have a long history of winning, letter carrier political fund awards within the NALC. And I plan on going into LA and walking out with, armfuls of awards once again.
Do you know the Michigan State rep?
I do.
He's from my branch.
Yep.
Yeah, he's all right. A shout out to Ron Zaleski, I guess. But let's see. In what specific ways would the NALC legislative structure, staff, and agenda change under a CLC administration?
Again, I think we need to be more aggressive than we currently are. I a lot of what I see is they're afraid. I don't want to say to upset people, but that's kind of the impression I get is they're afraid if they do this, well, the congressional rep is going to be upset. Listen, I'm in the room with multiple congressional representatives and senators and everything else. I talk to them the exact same way I talk to you, Josh. I'm like, listen, I represent 2,000 people. This is what our demands are. This is what we need you to come through with. And I've been in these meetings with, other NALC, for example, presidents or LCCLs, and I end that conversation with, if you can't produce this, we'll find somebody and put them in that seat that will. And people are aghast when I say things like that. But guess what? I don't have any issue getting any support out of my congressional reps. So, that's the biggest thing for me is we need to be more aggressive on these things. Because like we just talked about, you're lucky if you get a bill or two passed in your entire 30-year career. That's got to change. Okay, it's got to change because our wants and needs, that list, our wants and needs 30 years ago were much smaller than the current need for letter carriers now, especially table 2 letter carriers. And that's where we have to kick this thing into overdrive. And listen, if we step on a few toes along the way, or pardon my French, we piss a few people off, too bad, because you know what, letter carriers deserve that, period.
All right, so you're getting into the long question territory. This is a 2-part question, but I'm just going to ask it as one part because it's really all related. So I'm just going to, it says, you're running as part of the CLC slate, but many members may vote for individual candidates rather than an entire slate. If you're elected, there's a good chance you'll be working with officers from different tickets. Before the election, would you be willing to appear on podcasts or participate in discussions with candidates from other slates like Cariff or John Murphy from the stand-up slate? I think members would like to see how candidates with different viewpoints can have respectful conversations and work together for the good of the NALC. Would you be open to doing that, or is there a policy or expectation within the CLC that discourages or prevents candidates from appearing or collaborating publicly with candidates from other slates during the election?
Short answer is yes, and I've already done that. I've been on podcasts with Brother Caraff. I've been on podcasts with Brother Murphy. I don't have an issue getting on any podcast with, anybody on any slate, because the bottom line here is, at the end of the day, we're all here, hopefully, right, to do the right thing for letter carriers. And again, one of the things that I talk about with, my executive board, because people get, I don't want to say stuck in their ways on how they do things, but different people do different things. And you're a grievance guy. I'm a grievance guy. I spent a good number of years, 7 years, as an NALC Step B representative. And what I tell my executive board is, listen, we don't have to agree on how we're going to get from A to B. We just got to get from A to B. Josh Shrum might do it a different way than Dave Grosskopf does, and that's okay. As long as Dave and Josh cross that line, and at the end of the day, we get what, the mission was to be accomplished, that's all I care about. I'm not interested in all the stuff in the middle. I'm interested in the end result.
All right. Let's see. This one is I'd like to ask about the situation involving Michael Rivera, Ricardo Guzman, who serves as president of Branch 70, and the Article 10 charges filed against Rivera. Do you believe these charges were appropriate under the circumstances? More broadly, do you think union leaders should use Article 10 charges only as a last resort, or are you concerned that they could sometimes be used in ways that discourage dissent or political opposition within the union? If you disagree with how the charges were handled, how would you be willing to say so publicly, even if it involves someone in your own organization?
There's a complex question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the issue in Branch 70, again, I'm not privy to everything that's happened out there. I've seen some of the stuff online. I've seen, for example, Alan Gigex's, stuff out there. There's another one out there. I can't think of the name of it. I've seen some of that stuff. My initial reaction is this, and some people may or may not agree with this. First of all, what Branch 70 is doing is none of my business or anybody else's, okay? Or what's happening in a region. If it ain't your region, it's not your business. When it becomes your business is if or when that thing hits the convention floor on the appeals. So, I don't pay too much attention to it. I know, and again, this is what I was talking about earlier, Josh, with all this noise. I call it noise on social media. And that's what I view this question a little bit as. It's noise. There's a process in place, right, to handle those charges. Let that process play out. Number one, it's not my or your job to get involved in that. Number two, another thing I want to say about this is, there's a lot of nonsense. What I believe out there is people try to paint this picture because Ricardo is the chairman of the CLC and the president of Branch 70, and he did this. Well, Ricardo Guzman didn't do that. The membership did that. Okay. Now, I've said this before to other people I've talked to. If this was me and this was happening in my branch, would I handle this differently? I probably would. And the reason I say that is because I went through a period here in Branch 3 where we went through several sets of Article 10 charges. I want to say it was maybe 4 or 5, like right in a row. Okay. And the thing that I learned out of that is, as the president, I did not like to see my members fighting with each other. No matter who was right or who was wrong. And since that point, there were some Article 10 charges filed, and I immediately intervened once those charges were filed. I called the charging party, I called the charge party, and I said, "Listen, we need to sit down and we need to talk about this because, in my opinion, I don't want my branch, involved in a circus, you know." As the leader, I want to step in there. I want to try to mitigate that. I want to try to mediate that. And if I can, great. If I can't, well, then again, there's a process to play out. Another thing I want to say, there's all this nonsense about, James Henry is Ricardo Guzman's friend and Michael Rivera isn't going to get a fair shake. And I'll tell you what, I take a little bit of offense to this notion that's out there. And I'll just say some of these podcasters, okay, throwing shade at, for example, people like me or the CLC, because we're not running to social media screaming about whatever, because, they think James isn't going to do something because Ricardo's his friend. I don't know what some people are aware about, but I just saw this on social media the other day. I didn't go digging for this. I didn't ask for this, but I saw a post the other day where there's an October 2nd, 2023 letter out of, Branch 70 to the one lady involved. Was her name Mari, I believe, or something like that?
Yeah, Mari Thompson.
Yeah, Mari Thompson. Okay. And her appeal went up to the Committee of Appeals, and like a lot of these people are chirping on social media, who's on that committee of appeals? James Henry, right? Well, in that October 2nd, 2023 letter, James Henry rules against Branch 70. He reverses the decision. All right. So to all these people that are out there going, you're not showing leadership because you're not saying something or you're not doing this. There's a reason why some of us haven't opened our mouth, because there's other things out there that aren't being presented because individuals are trying to paint a certain narrative. And this is the thing I don't like about politics. All right. You got a problem with James Henry or Ricardo Guzman or Dave Grosskopf or anybody else. You come to me and you talk to me like a man. You want to go on social media and you want to run your mouth, or you want to get on a podcast and run your mouth, pardon my French, but you're a punk. Okay? That's the bottom line. That's how I operate. You got something to say, come to me and talk to me about it. I got nothing to hide. I don't dodge questions. I'm not going in another room. I'm not hiding behind a curtain. I'll address it with you. And again, I should be a big boy. You should be a big boy. You may like what I have to say. You may not like what I have to say, but we need to have constructive dialogue. And that goes back to the other question of working with, other candidates if they're elected, for example, if they're not CLC candidates. At that point, it does not matter whether I was part of the CLC or not. Once, hopefully, I am elected to the National Executive Council, it is my job to represent 290,000 letter carriers. And I don't care what happened getting, up to that point, because going from that point forward, it's my job to try to turn this thing around. And I've said this before on other podcasts. If I can't do that, you vote my ass out the very next election.
Now, you should have saw me in my high school days. I was pretty punk.
Yeah, I saw your what was that?
That
The
video.
morphing of younger you to the older you. I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty cool how you put that together.
Yeah, the technology is pretty cool lately. Let's see. This one's a long one again. It's probably your last tough one, to be honest.
Hmm.
But this person probably has a bone to pick with you. I don't know. Based on the question, it sounds like they think you should know who they are.
Okay.
But it is a fact that the real David J. Grosskopf, not the hacked version or internet imposter, was questioned by a letter carrier who was falsely accused by David on social media for being a station manager and unlawfully falsifying clock rings of city letter carriers. David, why did you refuse to apologize, refuse to be accountable, refuse or reveal who told you lies about the city letter carrier? And why did you intentionally commit defamation of character before and after the facts were revealed?
Yeah, you could tell Brother Knowles, why doesn't he post when he wallpapered social media with all that, me answering every single one of those questions? I answered his question where I got that information from. It was social media. It was out there all over the place, number one. Number two, I posed a question to him. I did not accuse him of anything, and Brother Knowles failed to answer that question. Okay, so nobody tried to defame anybody. I asked a question based on information that I had seen on social media, and Brother Knowles failed to answer it. And that's the simple answer to the whole question.
All right. All right. We can put that behind us now. Let's see. Why is the post office broke? Mismanagement or incompetence?
Well, I'll start with the first one. The post office isn't broke. I believe they make something like $80 billion a year. The post office is mismanaged. Okay. There's plenty of money to go around. It's a matter, again, it's a matter of leadership, right? Just like it is for the NALC, it's a matter of leadership for the United States Postal Service. I absolutely think we're wading into deeper and deeper water with a guy like Postmaster General Steiner. I think we are going to have some very big political fights ahead of us, and I'll even go as far as it could be for the very life of the U.S. Postal Service. I view this guy as an absolute enemy of the United States Postal Service and city letter carriers in the NALC. And we need to be on our game to make sure this administration and this Postmaster General does not get a grip on anything that can affect, the Postal Service, our collective bargaining agreement, our benefits, any of that stuff. We are targets. It is that simple. And there's a lot of, division right now leading up to this upcoming election, but that is going to have to stop once the membership makes its choice on who the leadership is, because we need to very quickly, gel and focus on potentially defending from anything, coming out of Congress, coming out of the president and or coming from the postmaster general.
Yeah, it's crazy that I feel like Steiner's an absolute snake, but it's crazy that I can even fathom saying that I miss the guy who did this when
Yeah.
things got hard. You know, I never thought I'd be saying that, but
Right. It's like, be careful what you wish for, right? We say this all the time with, everybody's like, I hate that supervisor. And I say it all the time. I'm like, you never know what could be coming behind that, right? It's the same issue here with, the PMG, obviously.
now should there be a national task force to implement fighting against SNDCs? If so, why are SNDCs bad decisions for our service and our members?
Well, listen, 110%. There should be a task force on this. Number two, NALC headquarters dropped the ball. NALC, or number three, I'm the first president in the country to beat an SNDC. And the reason that we did that here in Western New York without the help and or assistance from NALC headquarters is, number one, we saw the devastating effects that these SNDCs were having on communities and their delivery and service standards all across the country. That was number one. Is I did not want Western New York to turn into, Georgia or Texas or California, where they were having just incredible issues with service, and delivery issues. Number two, our sister union under this SNDC plan is under attack. Their jobs are at stake, right? We talk all this talk about brothers and sisters and how we're one and how we're united. And I challenged Brian Renfro on this at the time. I believe it was at the Region 11 rap session. I got up to a mic and I said, why aren't you doing something about this? Our sister union is under attack. We should be standing there shoulder to shoulder defending those, jobs in the APWU, not allowing that to happen, because there could be in a day when there's an attack on us and we're going to need the APWU. And I don't want to dig old stuff up, but, in my opinion, he didn't have a real good answer. And number three, even though it was a net, normally it involves a net gain of jobs for the NALC. I wasn't prepared to sell my community down the river for that, plain and simple. And that's why we fought the SNDC here in Buffalo, in Western New York, and won that fight. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the community that showed up, to help us out. I'm thankful for all the letter carriers that showed up to help us out. Our sister unions, showed up in force. Our local area labor federation, politicians from the local, state, and city level. We had everybody out there that you could absolutely think of. And number four, you might not realize this, but this spoken hub model, that's how the private industry works. They're trying to mold the United States Postal Service and prepare it for privatization. That's why every single one of these steps need to be fought. I'm not going, with 34 years in the Postal Service. I'm not going to allow that to happen. There are men and women that came before me to fight to keep this job. It's my job to fight to keep it for the next generation. And hopefully that next generation will continue, that same fight. And the Postal Service will be around for another 250 years, period.
Yeah, I always commend you for that. Everyone thinks that you did a great job with that SNDC. That's why they should be giving you a nickname. But I just thought about one, the Buffalo Cannonball. or something like that. I don't know. You're an honorary wrecking ball as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, would you be open to spending on Step B and arbitration teams to get the backlog down?
Yeah. The short answer is yeah. We need more, excuse me. We need more arbitrators on these panels to relinquish, the massive backlog we're looking at. Number one. Number two, the larger issue, I believe, is you need to fix the Step B process. Again, as a former Step B, primary for the Albany, Western New York team, a lot of people, they don't, I don't want to say don't like dispute resolution. But I believe that is an effective method to manage our Article 15 workload if the process is working properly. A lot of that focus needs to be on the Step B teams, their performance, what they're doing. And I can tell you this, Josh, and we brought this up at Committee of Presidents meetings when we're talking to President Renfro about this. In the, I don't want to say in the old days, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when DRT first started, you may not know this, but once or twice a year, the national president of the NALC and or Doug Tolino, for example, all the B teams came in for a meeting, and you sat in front of Bill Young or Fred Rolando and his counterpart, and they had all the data from your B team, and you had to explain why you were doing and what you were doing and things like that. So there was real accountability for the people that were in those positions, and I believe that accountability obviously isn't there anymore because we don't do that. We don't bring the teams in anymore. And, management's taken this, crazy stance on certain subjects, whether that's, cease and desist language, and all these other things. But that's to me the immediate thing is we need to fix that Step B level because that will again mitigate those things that are being impassed. And that's a very tough job. I've said this before that the toughest job in the NALC is an NALC primary Step B representative because you have to make decisions every single day. And, those decisions a lot of times may go against the union,
Yep.
and that's not an easy thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And if you're doing that in the right way, part of making that adverse decision, for example, against the union is educating the parties on what to do the next time, that type of incident or issue arises. People are so caught up in, whatever winning percentages, or I got to win every case, or, I got to do this. And I'm, guilty of this myself. Like, I remember when I was turning over the reins when I left Step B to when I won the presidency here in Branch 3. And, some of the advice that I gave the individual coming in is I told him, I said, you're only as good as your last decision in this job. So make sure every day when you're waking up, you have that focus and you have that hat on that, that you need to do the right thing. And that's going to cause you some pain and some heartache because you're going to get some calls from branch presidents and they're not going to be happy. And you need to
Yep.
be able to calmly explain to them, why we did what we did. And management needs to do the same thing. Listen, if their people aren't putting the right things in a file, they're not making the right arguments, or they're not doing their due diligence, or whatever the deal is, and then they need to be told that. It's not a negative thing. There's this connotation that everything is always so negative. It doesn't have to be so negative. Use that loss as a teachable moment on either side of the house. And I think if we can, get back to that, and again, it goes back to respect, right? It goes back to the Postal Service respecting us respecting the Postal Service, and applying the JCAM and what that language says, and doing the right thing. And I say this to my executive board all the time: doing the right thing, the majority of the time, isn't the easy thing. So a combination of those two things, we need a renewed focus on those Step B teams, and we absolutely need to get more arbitrators on these panels to get this backlog cleared out and get it back to a manageable workload.
I've always been amazed by how little Step B teams we have. I feel like there's plenty enough individuals who are qualified. I know you
Yeah.
can't just give that to anybody. It's a very tough position to be in, but I see people that are qualified left and right. So why,
It's the only
you know,
position in the NALC that you have to take a test and pass it in order to be in the position. you
yep,
know and again, this is just my view on it. The DRT test is a test of the basics of the JCAM. So if you can pass that with a rather high grade, again, you're very well versed in the basics of being able to contractually defend the NALC's position. And then again, not everything's built equally. Some of our folks have advocacy experience and things like that, and that always helps, especially if it's an impasse. The Step B rep can kind of set that impasse up for the advocate, if that's necessary too. So
makes sense. Now that almost half of all carriers have less than 5 years in, how will you connect and work with younger generations of carriers?
I do that currently here in Branch 3. I have multiple members on my executive board, that are in their 30s. I spend a lot of time training new stewards. I've been the president since 2018. We've trained more new stewards in Branch 3 probably in that period than in our history. One of my, I got a couple senior guys, they're both retired now, that are my main arbitration advocates. But one of my young guys showing great promise. He was just on your show the other day, Andrew Harrison. Andrew's doing a great job. Andrew's very young. He's very talented, at what he does. And when I see that stuff, I bring those people, into the fold and I get them involved because, at some point here, in another 3 years, I'll be 57. I'll have, at that point, good God, like 35, 36 years in, I could retire if I want to. And it's my job to turn this thing over and put it in a better place than when I got it. And with these younger folks coming in, I've been working to do that. I also have another young trustee, Colleen Cruiser, who's been training. My branch is lucky. We have our own OWCP representative that's very skilled, Judy Kirsten. She's got 20 or 25 years under her belt dealing with OWCP. Colleen's been working, with Judy, to learn those ropes. Judy's a retiree. Don't know how much longer she's going to be around to do that. But, I'm all about getting, the younger folks, involved, try to get them trained up. And that has its own set of, obstacles to it because, I think differently than some of the younger kids. And a lot of times I got to take a step back myself and be like, listen, we got to do this a different way. It's not, us old heads, run it a little different way than the young kids do. And it's going to be their union in the future. So I need to make sure I get their brains packed with as much knowledge as possible. And then you cut them loose and you let them run it the way they'd like to see this thing run. That's the way I think it should happen.
Man, I like to hear that because it seems like more often than not, the folks who are entrenched are putting up roadblocks to let themselves keep whatever they're doing for as long as they can up until their dying breath.
In
Uh,
general, I would agree with that statement. We're I'm I've said this before. We're not like term limits, right? For in
yep.
Congress, and they're talking about stuff like this. I mean, I don't know if that's the way to go here, but the more and more I see this, the more and more I think it is because it does no good, to stay in these positions as long as some of these people have. And again, I'll be honest with you, that's the reason a lot of us are taking a shot, running for, national office. Some of these officers been up there 20, 25 years.
Yep.
And people try to make the same argument about me. Well, you've been, a full time. I haven't carried now, I believe in, I want to say 14 years, between my 8 or 9 years as the president of Branch 3, then my 7 years as the primary NALC Step B representative. But again, if you look at my track record, I'm very in tune with what the hell's going on that workroom
Yep.
floor. We're in what's going on politically, what affects, letter carriers from, obviously S&DCs. We've gotten great arbitration decisions here, over the last year on, things like the geofence and stuff like that. I mean, I'm fighting all of those things here in Branch 3 that are affecting those letter carriers every day on the workroom floor. So for those people that make that argument that guys like me have no idea what's going on a workroom floor, I challenge you to come on down to 4845 Union Road in Cheektowaga, New York, and spend a day with Dave Grosskopf, and I'll show you exactly why I know what's going on that workroom floor.
No, you're connected. I think a lot of people will agree with that. But many branches do things like cut their nose off to spite the face. Like I've been trying to build a grievance catalog for my branch for a long time because when new stewards come in, like myself, I didn't know the precedents that were set. So I was actually convinced to decrease my precedents by accident. That I had like precedent where they had to pay grievances within 14 days. Well, my president told me he didn't know any precedent at Roseville, so he said just do 30. And then come to find out when I finally created the catalog, it was 14. And I'm like, man, now I agreed for more than what it was already. So I've been trying to build a catalog, but they're too stuck on the fact that I can use that against them politically, which I would not do. So it's like it seems like sometimes they care more about their positions than like things I can learn could be used. Whatever.
To me,
Being
that's
a steward is vulnerable. It is vulnerable. I can understand where they think, because I wouldn't have the full picture, but I wouldn't do something like that anyway.
Right. And to me,
Yeah.
that's a weird flex how you're going to use, grievance precedent, other than, hey, maybe the president didn't, like you said, he didn't know. Well, that may be true. It might not be intentional. And I'll give you an
Yeah.
example here, Josh, in Branch 3 again. When I was the vice president of Branch 3, again, this feels like it was many eons ago. But one of the things I was advocating with the president at the time was building our own custom software membership grievance tracking program that we do have here in Branch 3. And, we've got a server in the building and all these other things. And that's exactly what we did is we built a program that, because that
You need it.
Yeah, and to this day, I see a lot of branches working out of filing cabinets. And again, I did that for the vast majority of my career, but now I go, I don't even know how I did that because the program is so invaluable to us to go in there, like you said. We can search it by installation, by station, by grievance, you name it. We can search that thing, the issue, whatever it is, 9 ways to sideways, and we can pull every case that we've got that is precedent, in that installation and jam that into a file. And I started, that whole thing when I was the vice president talking to the president because they were leery. They didn't want to spend the money to build this program. They didn't want to, the server was expensive. I think at the time it was about $18,000. People are looking at me like, out of the side of their eye. And I'm like, listen, if you can get this program up and running the way we work it now, my executive vice president handles my grievance procedure exclusively. And that guy his name's Mike Levering, and that guy uses that program like a wizard. We've got a little over, I think, 50 stewards in the field or something like that. And Mike, like Stewart calls up and says, hey, this is the issue I'm having. Mike goes into that program, bam, pulls all the precedent out on that issue. It's in an email because we scan every single file in and we put it into that system. So everything is done electronically. It's done in real time. Stewards don't have to wait for things. When they walk into a room, they got, 20 decisions and the boss is going, where the hell did you get all this stuff, right? But that's the ability of having the technology and the system, so, we give the support to those stewards in the field. So when they walk in a room, they're not outgunned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you need that kind of thing. But just for the record, it's not my president who's worried about the politics of it, but it is other people that
I get you.
But Do you believe that members who are handicapped with certain disabilities who have a college education and decades of experience in the carrier craft deserve to be directors in the NALC? Please expand your answer. I'm not sure.
The answer is yes, 100%. For example, I have the chairman of my fellowship committee, Michael Hines, has Asperger's disease. Michael has technically a disability, and that has not stopped me from bringing that guy into the fold and, assigning him a position and allowing him, to participate, in his union. It's important. I mean, this is how you get the buy-in, from your own membership. Is you can't build these walls where you're like, because of this, I'm not going to do this with this person, you know. And I say this all the time. I mean, am I friends with, even in my own branch, am I friends with everybody? Absolutely not. But I've always, as a leader, made the commitment that if somebody has a skill that can help out the members that I was elected to represent, I'm going to bring them in the fold. It does not matter if I personally like them or not. If they've got the skills to pay the bills, we're going to use them here in Branch 3, including people with disabilities. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, we got 3 questions and then the typical question, but these ones are going to be the funny ones.
Okay.
What is his favorite color and why?
My favorite color, I would have to say, is red. And the reason I say that, you can't tell now at 54 years old, but when I was a very young boy, I was a redhead. I had fire engine red hair, and I used to I used to take a lot of ribbon from my fellow kids, because I was, again, it's only 1% of us, I believe, in the world that are perfect, that have red hair, and the other 99% were a little jealous. I wish I still had that hair. I don't have so much anymore. But that's the short answer. Favorite color is red.
Was it curly?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny you say that. When if you ever, I mean, as long as probably you've known me and for quite some time, I keep my hair very short because if it grows out, it tends to curl and it drives me crazy.
You weren't a punk like me, right?
Yeah, no, no, I was always an athlete. Yeah, no.
Okay, yeah. All right. Is he a hard taco or soft taco guy? And is he a fan of the burra taco? I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah, the burrito. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hard or soft? Listen, as far as I'm concerned, any taco is a good taco. I do prefer the soft shell tacos, and absolutely, burrito is the way to go. We have a place here in Buffalo. It's called DA Taste. It's a taco joint, and they exclusively serve specialty burrito tacos. I love the joint. Every time I've got a business meeting or something like that, and we need a place to go, that is the go-to place.
Now, this question, I don't even know how I would answer this because normally when you got a favorite taco, that's what you go for. But what are your top 5 kinds of tacos?
Good question. Like every time I'm out, the vast majority of the time, I will order fajitas.
Okay.
And again, that varies widely, whether that's the plain old chicken or steak, or then you get into the specialty stuff like Texas fajitas or something like that. Um, but yeah, definitely fajitas is the way to go. And then, like I said, the burrito, and then probably a hard shell, and then you got the I can't think of what it's called from Taco Bell, but where they put the hard shell wrapped in the soft shell,
Oh,
right?
the gordita?
I don't know if I think that's the deep fried one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay.
but maybe it's a double decker they call it or something like
Yeah,
that.
whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. Those would probably be the top 5, but in general, it doesn't matter the type of taco, we're gonna eat it.
Yeah, me too. I like sour cream, but I'm not very picky, man. Any taco works for me.
And when
But
we were in the Detroit convention, we ventured out there. There was kind of a Mexican section to the city there, and we hit more than a few spots over there. I tell people this story all the I can't even remember the name of it, and unfortunately, it's on the timeline on my old Facebook page. But probably the best, Mexican restaurant I've ever been to in the country was in Detroit.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I know we got El
Yeah,
Charros, but that's not going to be it because that's kind of like I don't know if it's as authentic as a lot of other places.
right, right.
El Charros is probably one of my favorites. But hey, it was good having you on here. Is there anything else you would like to add?
You know, the thing that I would do again this election, um, the thing I want to say is, and I've talked already a little bit about this, is all this noise on social media. Um, I'm not super fond of it. I believe, and it's the way I've, tried to conduct myself throughout this entire election, is to steer clear of a lot of that, what I deem to be nonsense. Um, your union elects its leadership, in my opinion, based on a high school popularity contest. And to me, that's an issue. Listen, if you want the prom king or the prom queen running the show, then expect prom king or prom queen results. The way I've always handled politics, and I do this in my own branch, and I take some heat for it, but you know, I'm all about these are my qualifications. These are what I've accomplished, in a leadership position. That's what I believe should matter to the membership. And if you watch my social media page once a month, every month, at the beginning of the month, I throw a thing up there with my Venmo and my Cash App, and I list all my qualifications and I list what I've done in a leadership capacity. And those are the things that I believe are important to candidates and how the membership should be picking their candidates. I don't give a shit if you're from a branch of 10 carriers. I don't give a shit if you're a branch, what if you're branch 1100, the largest branch in the country. If you can get the agenda accomplished for the NALC and you've got, those accomplishments under your belt, those are the candidates that you should be electing. If you want to elect candidates based on a high school popularity contest, all I'm going to tell you is look at where your union's currently at, because that's what you've been doing. That argument is gonna make its own argument all by itself. So, I would just encourage the folks that are on social media, especially the candidates, do that type of stuff, please. Don't be getting, caught up in all this other nonsense about the things that are going on out there. We have serious issues as a union that we're going to face going forward, and we need people that are serious about fighting those issues in those positions, not people that because, for example, I may come from a large voting block branch or a large voting block region, that's the only reason that person gets in. Because if that happens again, I promise you, you're going to continue to have the same problems that we currently have. And I'll end it on that, my friend.
All right, it was good having you. And I'm going to give you a
Absolutely.
proper exit. This will be a little bit fun. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next National Trustee, the Buffalo Cannonball.
If these guys are getting educated, we will be in big trouble.
Management's been weighing you down like a bag of wet catalogs, but you don't gotta take it. You strap on the elbow of education, dig it?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God, we need Article 8 scholars right now. The grievous genius and the Roseville Wrecking Ball doing amazing work.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.